Hey guys, what's up? So today doing a small minor update on the blue-white Explorer slash Pioneer control deck. Yeah, so I've been playing the deck a bit and kind of see how the deck works, all the good stuff. And yeah, for the most part, the deck works pretty well. It gets to the late game pretty often, and it grinds out. And oftentimes, what I like about this particular blue-white control deck is it can grind out your opponent really well, especially if you can drop a Yorion late game, or you have a bunch of like memory delusions in the graveyard to kind of draw cards, or you have Shark Typhoon on the board to start producing tokens, stuff like that. It's just that you have so many redundant cards in the deck. It's easy to grind out other decks if they can't, outlast your resources. Like um, I was able to easily outgrind some other blue-white control decks that were playing 60 cards instead of the 80 cards. Mainly because I have the Yorion and just multiple copies of Teferi and the Emperor, and their only real answers is to, faithful absence it, or like maybe make a shark token to try to, run into them. But for the most part, yeah, I think the deck is pretty good. Sometimes you do stumble a little bit because you're playing 80 cards. Sometimes you do get in a situation where your hand, the variance in your draws and stuff is kind of wacky. But we do play quite a few draw cards. We do play a bunch of cycling cards to kind of help fix that issue, kind of to thin out our decks and hopefully get our cards that we need in order to win. Most of the time, what I found is that if I'm if I'm against an aggro deck and I'm losing on tempo, I'm oftentimes trying to dig for like a Supreme Verdict, or in this case, Shatter the Sky to kind of clear the board and get back into it. So um, I often use like Omen of the Sea sensors, Shark Typhoon tokens to kind of just keep cycling until hopefully I'm able to dig far enough to get one of these and be able to resolve one and win the game, or at least get back into the game. Same thing with Narset, just to dig deep into our deck. 4 cards deep. This is also 4 cards deep. So um, yeah, that's what I've been liking, is being able to just try to hopefully dig for your answer and dig for your threats, and consistently resolve those and beat your opponent. Um, I made a couple of small minor changes to the deck just to try out a couple of things. I've played with this deck. I went from platinum or gold to platinum last season, and I kind of stopped there because I was just grinding out the gold right now. I'm saving up gold for some style cards and stuff like that. But for the most part, this deck has been completed. I even finished the mana base. This mana base takes 28 rares, I believe. Yeah, 28 rares. So if you don't got the rare wild cards, I highly do not recommend this deck. As I mentioned in my previous video, this deck is not for the faint of heart, or for people who are playing more of a budget, or have more limited budget in terms of like gems and packs and rares. Like I'm also out of rare wild cards right now. Like I just have nothing. But yeah, like the mana base is just insanely expensive. Rare cards, and even the deck itself. I think I recalculated this deck, and this deck takes up to like 60 rare wild cards and like 8 mythics. So yeah, if you were to spend actual real life money on this, I don't know how much it would cost to make. Probably close to like $1,000. I would think, just trying to pull all the rare cards to make the things. I grinded out a lot, like, events, or I didn't grind out events, but I grinded out, bought, in-game packs and stuff like that, just the crack packs. And I've been playing for a while, so that's why I had the all these wild cards available to kind of make this. But yeah, enough digression there. Let's go to the deck. Let's talk about some changes I made. They're not too big, but I'll talk about my experience playing the deck in case you want an update on that and what I thought about it and how I like it. I kind of gave you, sorry, I kind of already gave like sort of a run through at the beginning of this video. I'll speak more into depth about that. Um, so cards that I like, I definitely like March. It's been kind of like MVP in terms of removal. Portable Hole has been so-so. It deals with a lot of stuff, but there are certain times against certain decks it just doesn't do anything against other control decks, maybe against a big mana deck. This card is just completely dead. And like if you're playing against a mirror match, you're only ever really using this to remove a token, which is kind of a waste, honestly. But I mean, it's there. Sometimes you get to flash it back with like Yorion and hit another token or something like that. But um, great card. You do want it because you do want to be able to answer early threats efficiently. Um, because March is not a very efficient answer. It is an answer. It's a great answer, but it's not an efficient answer. Where Portable Hole is a great efficient answer. It just has the weakness that it's not instant speed and it's an artifact, so there's a chance that they can remove it and get their card back. But yeah, most of the time, no one ever bothers wasting time removing this thing. So yeah. Um, Faithful Absent, I've liked namely to use against other planeswalkers because this deck has a real bad time removing other planeswalkers. You can only attack over them. Um, the Clue token, yes, they'll get a draw card, but they do have to spend 2 mana. So, and if you have Narset on the board, they have to do it on your turn, which is great. Means they're not really spending their mana efficiently on their turn. Good for us. So them getting a clue token is not the worst. And sometimes you're able to actually get rid of the clue token too if they don't have open mana and stuff like that. Sometimes I end up farewelling and I'm just getting rid of everything. But yeah, um, great removal card. Probably better options in different formats and stuff, but I think Faithful Absence is the best option we got for blue white. If you're playing Esper, you have so much more options. I don't think you even play Faithful. You play like Vanishing Verse. You play Void Ren. So I might try to make this deck in Esper, but it takes up a lot of rare cards. So I'm slowly kind of building up towards that. May take like another month or two of grinding before I'm able to kind of make that deck. But yeah. Next here, I decided to try out Censor. I don't like Jirari. Jirari just never felt good. Censor, there's been a few times where it's come in handy, and late game I kind of just cycle it to try to draw better cards and stuff like that. But yeah, it's here to kind of essentially act as a cantrip because we're only playing 34 lands, where I think some decks like to play like 36, 35 lands to kind of make sure they hit their land drops every turn. I'm making my mana base a little bit more greedier since I'm playing a lot of cycling cards like Censor and Shark, even Search for Skanta. So that's the main reason why I'm only doing just the 2 Censors and 34 lands. Um, Jirari just it only felt good picking it up with um, Narset if you need a land, but otherwise it's just kind of garbage because the land is tapped and you just don't do anything with it. So I'd rather cycle instead of just putting in a tap land. For Omen, Calm off the Yorion, not much to say. Now, Search for Skanta, I still like the card. Um, I cut it down to one, namely because I needed to make room for like Censor and a couple other cards, and so I ended up just cutting it down to one. And it's one of those cards that if you see it early game and your opponent's not really doing anything, you can develop this card really early. Hopefully get filter your draws, get what you need, and flip this, and then it can become a win con on its own later down the line. I obviously drawing two of it is kind of bad. Um, but having two is redundancy. But I guess you don't really need to see this card to win. If you see it, great. If you don't see it, it doesn't matter too much. So I like playing the one copy, just knowing that I have it in my deck and it's a potential way for me to kind of gain advantage, especially against the mirror match. Obviously, it loses to Field of the Dead, or sorry, Field of Ruin. But against the mirror match, if they don't have anything, and you can constantly you know, grab a card off of this card, you'll just win the game from there. So great card. Uh, Cut down the Dovin's Vita to 2. Obviously, it's one of the best counter spells, but it's narrow. A lot of decks nowadays are creature based and mid range, so this card doesn't really answer creatures obviously, and so it's kind of like luck Lexer. I can't pronounce right now. Either way, it's kind of against those decks, so I decided to just cut it down to two. Still a great card against the mirror match and combo decks and stuff like that. Three Narset still like her at three. You can probably cut this down to two if you wanted to. There's a few times where I have flashed her back with Yorion and started drawing cards off of her. So that's what I like. It's just her to combo with Yorion, and she kind of um, is good against like Esper, Greasefang because they can't cycle their cards anymore. Good against Phoenix. Good against her passive ability is actually pretty relevant, I would say. Good against other mirror matches and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think Narset is definitely here to stay, either at two to three copies there. Four Absorb because we have no other good counter spells to really play, so I just threw in four. You could play between three to four there. And the rest of the deck, for the most part, has stayed the same. Um, Wandering Emperor, Teferi, you need four ofs, because you need them to win the game. They're your win conditions, and they're great to have. And they're pretty redundant, so or sorry, having them in fours means you are gonna have redundant win conditions, which is good. Uh, three to four Memory Deluge. I've seen some people play three, some people play four. Me personally, because I'm playing Narset at three, I just put it at three, so I'm not like double dipping on my search cards as much. But yeah. Farewells and Sharks. These numbers can vary. I still like Farewell. In certain matchups, it's a nice board wipe. At 6 mana, it is expensive though, so you might be able to just play, one instead. Shark Typhoon is great. Puts a body on board. I usually sometimes cycle this for just the two, just to try to filter through my deck, and which is fine. Um, it can be a win condition on its own. You rarely get to resolve this as an enchantment, but it doesn't matter. It's still a really good card there. Now, land base has changed a little bit. I decided to cut down the Field of Ruin to two because there were times where I drew too many of these, which is kind of weird. You would think in an 80 card deck, you would not open up with two Field of Ruin and like a couple turns later draw like a third one. So that's what I found myself happening a few times, I guess. And so I'm decided to just cut this down to two, and then by cutting it down to two, allows me to cut down on the amount of basics I'm playing. So I'm only playing two island and two plains, and that's it. That seems to work really well. So if people are Bosejuing me, or not Boseju, sorry, if they're fielding me also in the mirror match or something like that, or they're playing like Assassin's Trophy or something like that, four basics should be good enough to get you a land and stuff like that, and you know, so you don't fail the find or fail the search. So four copies of the plains, and then two ruins, and everything else is a rare. So I decided to just go four of everything else, like four irrigated, four pathways, hollow fountains, glacials, you know, anything dual color, basically four of. And then up here is the monocolor stuff. So still playing Otawara. For me, I almost never use it. It's just there, just in case. But for the most part, like spending 4 mana to bounce something is not that great. You're losing out on so much mana. I will only do this if I had a counter spell in hand and it's a threat I can't deal with at the moment. I would bounce it and then just counter it later. Um, but yeah, for the most part, almost never activate this thing. It usually just comes in as land. Um, Two halls has been pretty good. I like two halls. I think it sometimes gets filled with ruin, or sometimes your opponent does use some sort of removal to kill it. So it's nice to have a secondary copy of it in the deck. Castle Vantress, you can play one or two. Because I cut down on the search for Escanta, I figured, okay, I might as well just leave two here in case I want to actually spend my mana to kind of scry through my deck. But yeah, just two. And then this one I actually use a lot. Iganjo here is actually very good land. You might even want to play two of these, honestly. It's great. You just kind of kill something if it's attacking um, or if it's blocking. Yeah, just overall, I think this is a lot better than Arawara at least in this particular format or in this deck. Because 3 mana to kill something is not that bad. 4 mana to bounce something seems pretty terrible to me sometimes. There's not many things you want to send back to your opponent's hand, um, unless you have a counter spell or like a Thought Seize or something like that. There's no way to like I mentioned, there's no way to reduce it. There's no Baby Teferi, so you're not really gonna be using this against like Baby Teferis. You're gonna be using this against most likely other opposing um, Planeswalkers or something like that. But yeah, I much like this one over Otawara. And then 2 Castle Arundel. You could probably just play one, honestly. Cut this down to one and maybe just add another Egonjo or something like that. Having two is just for redundancy. Like I mentioned, a lot of this deck is just redundant. Like, one is none, two is something, So that's the philosophy I went with, is that if you have one copy of the card, uh, you're gonna lose it. It's whatever. You're not gonna see it, or it gets killed somehow. It's whatever. The only one copy of the card I have in this entire deck is just Search, namely because it's also a legendary. Um, so anything legendary in a deck like Search for Skanta or like the lands, I usually play one of, unless it's a Planeswalker. Then it's fine. But you don't want to play like a Search for Skanta over a Search for Skanta. It would just kill each other without you benefiting off of it. Where like if you play a Teferi over a Teferi, you can still benefit off of that. Um, same idea with the lands is if you draw 2 Gonjos and those are the only lands you have in your hand, you can only play one of them. It kind of sucks at that point. That's why with the Gonjo and Otawara, I only play one of. So if I do draw them, I can still play them and not have to worry about like drawing 2 Otawaras and not being able to do anything, uh, or not, or only being able to play one of them instead of being able to play both. So yeah, that's it for the main deck. Side deck wise has changed. So I took out Rest in Peace, but I I haven't played against any Greasefang decks honestly. So I gravitated towards using Gravedigger's Cage. Now Gravedigger's Cage doesn't really work against Greasefang because Greasefang brings back an artifact, and this doesn't let you bring back a spell or a creature, I guess. So it doesn't work against Greasefang, but it still works against like Coco decks, Collected Company decks, and other decks that try to cheat out stuff onto the board. Well, that's what I have it in for mostly, is to play against Coco decks, Angels, any combo deck that's trying to cheat something from their deck onto the board. That's what I have the cage for, and it still works as Grave Hate against other. It still works against Croxa and stuff like that. The only deck it doesn't work against is Greasefang, unfortunately. But I think for 1 mana, it's not bad to have. 2 Sunsets, same idea. I added the third Doan's Veto in here. For actual Graveyard Hate, I'm playing Unlicensed Hearse. Probably can play 2 copies of this, and you'd be fine. You can crew this with the Emperor token. You can crew it with the Shark if you needed to. Um, so yeah, right now I'm thinking just 2 copy or just 1 copy because I only have one. But I might make another one. But for now, I think 1 copy is okay. You may not never ever see it, so I don't know. It could be um game breaking against certain decks, and then if you don't see it, you can kind of just let them go ham with their graveyard, which kind of feels bad. But yeah, that's what I have for now. And or I guess the rest of the extra deck here, or the side deck, sorry, is pretty much the same. I am trying out Dream Trawler. Uh, Supposedly it's been working well for some people. I don't know um what deck I'm supposed to side this against really. I think you're supposed to side this against mid-range decks and stuff like that, so you can outvalue them later in the game, and they can't get rid of this thing. Um, I think that's what you're supposed to do with this. Like, obviously with Hullbreaker, you can easily just slap this against any control deck, and you should be able to win. But Dream Trawler, I think it's there for the life gain and the ability for it to be hard to remove, and good blocker, it gets bigger, etc. I can see where it can be really good. Um, I just not too sure of all the situation where you would want to side this in. Um, you know, so hard to say. It's in my deck for now. I'll try it out and see if I like it or hate it. Um, but yeah, some people have been playing 2 to 1 copy of this, the sideboard, which I thought was interesting, and I put it in here just so I want to try it out. But yeah, that's basically it for the deck. I may post some gameplays of this more later on. But for now, this is what I got, and yeah, hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you guys next time.